Today we're going to be discussing the secret fears of codependents. So if you're somebody who is figuring out that you struggle with codependency, you might be a little confused. I know I was. When my life imploded, I was probably in my early 30s, and my life was falling apart. And I was frustrated, I was angry, and I hated myself. I hated myself because I couldn't figure out how to get happy. You know, my kids were healthy, I had a beautiful home, we had a business, I had a husband that everyone loved, but I was just absolutely miserable. I had these feelings about my ex-husband, but wherever I looked, they were invalidated. I knew nothing about covert narcissism. I knew nothing about codependency. I knew nothing about being born the adult child of an alcoholic. I knew nothing about CPTSD. I knew nothing about abandonment. I knew nothing about caretaking. I knew nothing about my internal landscape. Part of my story was I developed late onset asthma. So I never had asthma as a child. I had stomach issues growing up. I now understand that they were related to like my emotional issues that I was having because I grew up in such a home that was full of criticism, full of control. It was a punitive home. Love was conditional in my home. And so I never really felt safe. And I was always trying to figure out how to take care of my mother, how to be nice to my mother, how to get validation from my mother. And it was nearly impossible. And I'm grateful that I had some sense that my father loved me or approved of me, because I don't know what would have happened if I didn't at least think that I had some connection to my dad. But I developed late onset asthma. I had stomach issues. I believe that I had an ulcer at one point. I had rashes all over my body. My hair was falling out. I was having racing thoughts. My heart would race. I was just literally imploding. And I was going to a doctor for allergies and asthma, and he said to me, you better listen to your body because your body is listening to you. And it was like a huge aha moment for me, because now I realize, again, looking back, I was a child. This doctor represented an authority figure in my life, and he was telling me that, yes, Lisa, it's okay. You can look inside yourself. I grew up in a house where there was the no talk rule. There was the no feel rule. There was the no think rule. You know, do what we tell you to do and appreciate it. Never need, never talk, never tell a counselor how you really feel, never cry, never ask for more than what we give you. There was this stunted experience, and at the same time, this constant seeking of, well, if I do this right, maybe mommy will love me. If I do this right, maybe I'll get daddy's approval. If I don't do this, maybe mommy won't get so angry, because my mother was a rager. But this, again, this is something that no one outside of our home would have seen. And so we grew up walking around on eggshells. And so understanding codependency is the process of understanding yourself and understanding this idea of why codependents can develop codependency, why they end up getting so frustrated, and better understanding themselves so that we can move towards learning how to regulate why we feel what we feel and what we feel. When you come from a home where there is the no talk rule, when you come from a home where you are punished when you dare to express an emotion, or when you come from a home where the love that you receive from your parents is conditional, you start to feel like a circus dog. You are constantly scanning the environment to try to figure out, well, is this going to make her happy? Is this going to keep her calm? So you become hypervigilant. But the hook really is mommy's love. The hook really is mommy's validation. Now, when you're a child and you're trying to figure out how to get this very essential, very primitive, very natural, very necessary, it was your right to gain this connection and this bond to your mother and your father. By the way, you were entitled to it, and it is not your fault if you didn't receive it, and your subconscious mind right now is programmed to be a codependent, that you now seek people to take care of. If you're a codependent, then you probably have found yourself in an enabling role. You've probably attracted alcoholics, possibly people with addiction issues, a porn addiction, sex addiction, gambling addiction, some type of an addiction. And what you do, if you're very good at being a codependent, you will lie for someone. You'll cover up for them. You'll prevent them from experiencing the consequences of their actions. And so below the veil of consciousness, you have this identity that, thanks mom and dad, you have associations, thanks mom and dad, that have you believing that your worth, your very identity, is tied to how well you can take care of other people, how well you can cover for other people. Because you learned that love was conditional. You had to do something. You had to get attached to something outside of you that you could not control. And you had to perform for this other person. So your entire identity is wrapped up in the other, which I think is really interesting because the word mother is other, just with an M in front of it. So our experiences of mother are crucial. And what ends up happening as an adult, if we don't think about the quality of our relationships with our mothers, and if we don't consider why we end up catering and rescuing and fixing, and why we end up feeling so frustrated. And I think this is a really important piece of the puzzle, because so many people that I coach and so many people that take my 12-week breakthrough coaching program, the question comes up in the comments like, well, do I have borderline personality disorder, or do I suffer from codependency? And you need a professional diagnosis to be diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. It is a mental illness, and many researchers are suggesting that it's chemical. Now, it does have environmental factors, but there are also reports that suggest that it is chemical, that there are chemical imbalances. When you have borderline personality disorder, everything is amplified. Your emotions are amplified. Your amygdala is highly activated. So when you look and you scan the environment, you see people's facial expressions and you are perceiving them as a threat, even if the other person doesn't intend to come off like a threat. When you are codependent, you tend to be caretaking, and your frustration ends up being really rooted in being frustrated because you have these set of rules that you think are going to net you this connection, and they don't work. So imagine, I write about this in Quantum Tools to help you heal your life now. Imagine if you grew up in a family where your dad kept driving into potholes, but your father never knew that the pothole was why he got a flat tire. Just imagine that. So your dad's driving down the highway and hits a pothole. It takes him an hour to change the tire. Gets back in the car, puts the family back in the car, you drive another mile and boom, hits another pothole. Your father doesn't associate pothole, flat tire, frustration. So there's all this frustration in you and your dad and your family because there's no connection to understanding that what you're doing wrong is causing the flat tire. That the driving into the pothole rather than avoiding the pothole is why you get a flat tire, why you lose time, why you end up being frustrated, and why you can't get from point A to point B in under 6 hours, right? So imagine if that was your reality. That's what it feels like to be someone with codependency. You think you're doing everything right. You're anticipating the needs of the people that you love. You think that by rescuing people, that by catering to their needs, covering for them, by thinking about them, by making a big deal out of their birthday, by cleaning out their refrigerator, by calling them, by giving them money, by paying their rent, by rescuing them, by putting up with even their emotional outbursts, right? Being the quicker picker-upper in their life. Because you taught, remember, you were taught that love is conditional. So part of your subconscious mind, your subconscious conditioning is, I must do something in the 3D world for this to work. To do what? To be a human being. To love and to receive love, which is what you're entitled to. And imagine if, just for a moment, every single person on planet Earth was able to love and be loved. What a beautiful place this would be. Imagine if all codependents stopped thinking that their love needed to be conditional. In other words, to gain love, they had to do, they had to perform, they had to be good enough for this other person. Imagine if we lived in a world where we felt enough and we loved ourselves and we were no longer stung by the rejection and the abandonment of other people. What a wonderful world this would be. But when you're codependent, you're on this hamster's wheel. Love is conditional, so you think. And so you put conditions on love. You think to yourself, I have to do this. That's why you attract problematic relationships, because you need to take care of. That's why so many codependents will fall for a narcissist with a sob story, right? That's why a codependent will fall for a narcissist who is idealizing them. It's the first time in your life you feel seen, you feel validated. And then you fall right into the caretaking of the needs of the insatiable narcissist who is constantly moving the goalposts, just like mom and dad. Well, if you didn't do this, then I would have loved you. If you would have said that, then I wouldn't be angry at you. It's a perfect mirror to what you experienced as a child. You just don't know it, right? So it's important that codependent people recognize that this idea that they need to prove themselves worthy of love comes from childhood. It's a subconscious pattern. That's why in my 12-week breakthrough coaching program, I offer you 13 meditations and a series of resources and worksheets and video trainings to help you heal the subconscious programming. Because until you get into the subconscious mind, you stay on this loop. Because your brain and my brain is designed for autopilot. And in terms of consciousness, we are more subconscious than we are conscious. And we are all living below the veil of consciousness, all of us. And if we're lucky, we came from nurturing homes. Love was not conditional. Love was given freely. The boundaries were fair. Nobody was a dictator. Punishment wasn't punitive. We didn't feel criticized. We weren't humiliated. We weren't gaslighted. We weren't bullied by our parents. We felt nurtured and we felt loved. We felt like we were in the cups, in the hands, the palms of our parents who cradled us and loved us. And we understood that boundaries were fair. And we were loved even when we bumped into a wall. We were loved even when we spilt milk. And so we're not walking around on eggshells trying to be perfect. So when you struggle with codependency, you think you're doing everything right, and you eventually hit a wall because you are so spent. There's nothing left to give. And in many of the cases, you attract someone you have to take care of. If you've attracted a narcissist, whether a covert, vulnerable narcissist or an overt, grandiose narcissist, you're going to end up feeling like a horse that's following a carrot. Because they're always moving the goalpost. They're impossible to please. It's always your fault. And good codependents try to figure out what everybody else needs. And in time, what happens with codependents, which is why they get so frustrated, and I think that's why so many of us wonder, do I have borderline personality disorder? There's definitely an overlap. The abandonment piece is definitely an overlap. Codependents fear abandonment. Borderline personalities, severe abandonment. They enmesh with their partners and their partners become everything. And the fear of the partner losing them creates all of this fear in them, this emotionality in them, and it's very difficult to regulate those emotions. There's a need to spit out these emotions and learn or think about what was said after when someone with borderline personality disorder is calm, right? The worst thing anyone can say to someone who is emotional, whether they are a codependent, vomiting how they feel, or someone has borderline personality disorder when they're emotional, is to tell them to get over it, right? No bueno. Not very smart to do. So I don't suggest telling someone whether they're codependent and they're angry and they're frustrated and they've reached their boiling point, or someone is suffering with borderline personality disorder. The worst thing you want to do is to tell someone to just gain control of themselves, because in that moment you can't. You can't. Things have to calm down, and when everyone's calm, that's when we can introduce a rational conversation. But telling someone to get over it is invalidating. It just causes more rage. It just excites the limbic system more. The amygdala is flared up and the prefrontal lobe is knocked offline. So there's no sense having a conversation with someone. So when you're codependent, you will hit that, if you're lucky, I think, you'll hit that point where you're like, I'm done. I'm tapping out. Tapping out. I can't do this caretaking thing anymore. I can't do this stonewalling thing anymore. I can't do this begging you to talk to me thing anymore. I can't pretend I'm not done. I can't pretend that I'm not happy catering to you. I'm not happy buying your socks and buying your underwear. I'm not happy cutting your meat. I'm not happy anticipating what it is you need every day. I'm not happy pretending you're not a miserable, passive-aggressive person. I'm not happy pretending you're not cruel to the children. I'm not. Codependents pretend that their partners aren't the way they are. They get stuck in the rescuer mode. And what happens? You end up being frustrated. And then you know what? You end up feeling guilty and you end up feeling ashamed because you got frustrated. And because so often codependents present themselves to the world as if they have no needs, you kind of box yourself into a corner, dear one. At least I know that's what I did. I didn't tell people what I was really doing. I was afraid to disappoint my mother. I felt like she was very happy that I married my husband. I felt like my parents were ecstatic that I married this man. And they were. They loved him. And so me telling them the truth, I risked their love all over again. Because I knew once I told my parents I'm done, I'm a codependent, I'm wrong. I didn't know I was codependent. I didn't know I was the grandchild of alcoholics on both sides. I didn't know that I had all of these issues. I didn't know that I didn't feel good enough. I didn't know that I thought that I had to prove myself to people, and that's why I married someone who is very happy moving the goalpost, very happy making me feel like I'm not good enough. I didn't know I was repeating this pattern, but you know what? I'm in therapy. I'm checking myself. I'm holding myself accountable. I'm making amends. I am so sorry I have done what I have done to my children. I'm so sorry that I've been controlling. I'm so sorry I didn't see it. I'm so sorry, but I need to change. But unfortunately, my ex-husband said, I'm not changing. That's what he said. I'm not changing. Just because you want to change doesn't mean that I have to change. And it was one of the scariest moments of my life, because that meant in that moment, every single one of my little girl's fears, every fear of my inner child came to the surface. Here it was. I'm going to tell them my truth, and they're going to abandon me. And you know what happened? They did. They were very unhappy when I said, I'm getting a divorce. So all of my fears came to the surface, and it was hell. It was hell. I don't know how else to explain it. I just said to my husband, Anthony, yesterday, I don't know how I got through those early days. I don't know how I got through those early days. It was just pure will to survive and pure desire for something else. So codependence, when we're talking about the secret fears that codependents have, the secret fears are, we're not good enough. The secret fear is, if I dare to tell my truth and live for myself, the people that I love, or the people that I think love me, are going to walk away. Right? So the secret fear is, if I do tell my truth, then you're going to walk away. If I do tell you how I really feel, you're going to walk away. If I dare to look within, I'm going to see all this shame that has been induced over my lifetime as a child, not ever being able to gain the validation of my parents. So when you stop, when you get off the hamster's wheel, right, it's in that moment all of your fears come to the surface. In Codependency Manifesto, it's the book over my shoulder, I talk about facing your dragon. Like everybody has a dragon on the inside. And when you're struggling with codependency, you're living below the veil of consciousness, but you don't know it. You have all of these fears that are really operating your behaviors, but you don't know it. You have all of these emotions that are tied to these faulty beliefs that are the cause of your behaviors, that are the cause of your relationship dynamics, but you don't know it. So you're literally living below the veil of consciousness. And you are attracting people who are just as below the veil of consciousness. And that's why if you get angry when you are codependent and you get sick and tired of being sick and tired, look me up because I have figured out how to get out, but it's not easy. It's not easy. And anybody that suggests that healing from codependency is easy is just simply wrong, because you have to turn over every stone in your mind. You have to learn how to think in an entirely new way. You have to learn to believe things that you never believed before. And you have to face all of this abandonment stuff. You have to face the inner child that has all these fears that you are not good enough. And the brain is designed to not do that. The brain doesn't want to look at the fears. The brain doesn't want to look at, I don't feel good enough. That's why we have all these like neurotic behaviors around caretaking, around anticipating the needs of others, about, around being the first person to volunteer to take the kids' soccer team to Canada, right? Why we bake 100 cookies instead of 30 for the kindergarten class. Why we're always trying to jump in and be more and to rescue and to fix, right? Because we've been taught to perform for love. And this is very dangerous, because people who are taught to perform for love, you're going to attract people that make you feel less than. You're going to repeat the dynamic. You're going to attract people like narcissists who feel entitled to exploit you. And unfortunately, when it comes to narcissism, a narcissist sees your vulnerability as a weakness. They feel like they are entitled to put you down and to exploit you. You deserve to be exploited because you're so weak. This is a terrible way to live your life inside a codependent, narcissistic dynamic. And if you're in one, I know I was in one, I didn't know I was in one. It is when you get yourself out of it and you look back and you think about the sense of entitlement that a narcissist has to keep you trapped. The sense of entitlement the narcissist has to keep you codependent, to keep you fawning, to keep you people-pleasing, to keep you walking on eggshells, to keep you confused, to keep you guilt-ridden, to keep you full of shame. It is like they are expunging your right to breathe and to live your own life. That's how serious healing from codependency is. The secret fears that we have as codependents is that we're not enough. And that if we dare to accept our truth and to tell our truth, this person's going to walk away from us. And you know what? Lots of times they do. Because when you are codependent, you have attracted very fragile, very delicate relationships. And it's your construct. This is where the law of attraction stuff comes in. Because if our internal paradigm is, if I do this, then you'll love me, that's a very delicate, think of it as a crystal chalice. It's a very delicate crystal goblet, if you will. Now, the minute I start to change, what's going to happen to that goblet? It's going to crack. And then what happens is I don't have any defense mechanisms anymore, because the defense mechanism that I thought is dysfunctional was the only defense mechanism I had, which is really a coping strategy. So codependency is a coping strategy. So if I can anticipate your needs, maybe you'll love me. If I am the volunteer, if I'm the super volunteer, if I am the one that donates to charity, if I am the one that is taking care of everyone else's children, if I'm the one walking everyone else's dog, if I am the family nurse, the family doctor, the family therapist, if I am the one bailing people out of jail, if I am the one making sure that everybody else has what they need, then that means I'm okay, because love is conditional. At least that's what my program says, but it's dysfunctional. And unfortunately, until we awaken from that dysfunctional process, we stay stuck. That is how serious it is to heal from codependency. Now, on the narcissistic side, what ends up happening as a codependent is you manifest people who mirror this pattern. It's a paradigm, and the matrix is real, right? Bruce Lipton says that the matrix is actually a documentary. And so whatever paradigm that you were born into as a child becomes your internal paradigm, right? And what ends up happening is this is the way you view the world. And we all believe what we experience as children, right? And now what ends up happening is we see what we believe. So if I see internally that love is conditional, I am not good enough, I need to beg for approval, I need validation, I need someone outside of me to declare that I, Lisa, am enough. By the way, no, you don't. You were born enough. That's right. You're divine. At your core, you are born enough. You don't have to prove yourself to anybody. But if your codependent paradigm says otherwise, unfortunately, dear one, what ends up happening is through the magic of the matrix, this is the paradigm that gets created. If you look at your work situations, ask yourself, is there any codependent narcissism going on here? Do I acquiesce? Do I brown nose? Right? Am I a super achiever? Am I perfectionistic? Is my value dependent upon what other people think? Because i.e., that is you seeking conditional love because your subconscious mind has programmed you to believe that you as yourself are not good enough. It's not okay for you to make a mistake. It's not okay for you to talk about your feelings. It's not okay for you to have a need. It's not okay for you to cry. It's not okay for you to just be. I love Shakespeare's soliloquy in Hamlet, to be or not to be. That is the question. That is the question every codependent person is going to need to face. And quite frankly, every narcissist's question too. The difference between a codependent and a narcissist is self-awareness. A narcissist has zero self-awareness or they're aware of the self, but I'm talking about the ability to self-analyze. I'm talking about the ability to look within and see the space that carries our wounds and to be humble and to self-regulate and to be self-accountable like, wow, I did that. I really hurt someone. But in order to do that, you have to be somewhat of a healthy person, which means that you're going to have empathy for other people, which means you're going to have to experience emotions. You're going to have this internal experience of emotions when it comes to other people, which narcissist studies are proving that they don't have. They don't have the same emotional response you or I would have to someone else in pain. They don't have the Jiminy Cricket moment where, oh, I shouldn't have said that, or, oh, I lied, or, ooh, that was arrogant of me, or, ooh, that was a little mean, or, ooh, that was a little self-righteous of me, like, ooh, that was very critical. They don't have the Jiminy Cricket. You know, they've squashed Jiminy Cricket a long time ago, you know. So that's a big difference between somebody who, I think it's a generalization, but the kind of people that I attract into my community and the people who take my programs and purchase my products are people that want that Jiminy Cricket moment. But they don't only want the Jiminy Cricket, aha, this is what I'm doing wrong moment. They want tools, right? So they want the gladiator moment. They want the warrior moment. They want to know, what can I do now? And that's where all of my books come in and all of my programs come in and what this YouTube channel is all about. I've created a YouTube channel that I wish I had at 2 o'clock in the morning when I was a young mom with 3 kids and I was just coming out of the codependent fog because I didn't have access to tools. I knew that I was codependent, but I didn't have the nuts and the bolts of it. I didn't understand from a holistic perspective the science behind the neural wiring behind codependency, the psychology behind codependency, the familial generational karma behind codependency. I didn't understand the spirituality behind codependency, you know, and that's where I needed tools. I didn't understand the law of attraction, right? I didn't understand how what I was at a subatomic level was energy. and I was vibrating, my cells were vibrating. We're all mostly water, and water is a wonderful conductor of energy, right? We're all water bottles walking around on planet Earth. And I think it's so interesting that there are people out there that don't understand that on a subatomic level, you are vibrating, and you're vibrating particular frequencies. It's a fact, right? So we're all patterned for a particular frequency. Is it any coincidence that so many codependents manifest narcissistic relationships, that codependents end up with alcoholics, codependents end up with people who have drug addiction problems? Is it any wonder why so many codependent moms and dads end up having children with addiction issues that we enable, that we take care of, that we shelter from responsibilities? We really have to look at that in ourselves, because that type of a parent that is sheltering their child from consequences has their identity tied up in taking care and enabling this child. Who am I if I don't enable this child? And another layer of that is this idea that my worthiness is tied to conditions. And so I must cater to my child. I must rescue my child. Otherwise, my child will abandon me. And this goes back to the original abandonment wound from mom and dad that we have to work out on the road to recovery. So if you are struggling with codependency, you have to know that it's not your fault. You also have to know that you were born enough. I think it's really important, very, very important, that you understand that the baseline is that you are enough. The baseline is that at your core, you are literally light. There is nothing that you need to prove to anyone to be enough. It's already written in the stars, you're enough. Now, on a psychological level, how our personalities have been formed, how our psyches have been formed, how our awarenesses of self, our self-perceptions have been formed, have been affected by things that are outside our control, like our environment, or perhaps DNA, right? That's not your fault. It's very, very important that you recognize that things happen to you that were outside of your control. As an adult, however, which I think is amazing, if you keep reaching for consciousness, if you keep expanding your level of self-awareness, if you keep addressing the dragons within, guess what? You have to face those fears. And you know what happens when you face those fears? Well, your knees shake, you might get diarrhea, you might get hives, you might have a panic attack. But if you keep facing your fears, they dissolve, they go away. You learn to integrate. You learn to regulate your emotions. You learn to set boundaries, even though you're afraid someone might walk away from you. So there's this beautiful integration that happens within you, mind, body, and soul. You recognize that your personality has been affected by the voice of the superego, which is probably mom. You're not good enough, Lisa. You didn't try hard enough. You're just too dramatic. You always want things your way. You're seeking attention, Lisa. That's why nobody likes you, Lisa. That's why you don't have any friends, Lisa. That was my superego. That was the voice of my critical inner critic. But it wasn't my voice. It was my mom's voice. But I had to face that voice. I had to learn to reparent myself. I had to learn to get to a higher level of consciousness. And that's why all of my programs, I incorporate meditations in them, because it allowed me to calm down that voice, and it allowed me to become the observer of my experiences. I could observe this inner narrative that wasn't mine. I could observe these feelings that were natural and they were valid, but that I could regulate them. Once I could observe them, then I can regulate them. So you're not alone. I think that the paradigm that we live in actually encourages codependency. I think that if you look around in this world, you'll see people who want you to think like them everywhere. You'll see people punishing other people for not thinking like them everywhere. And if you are willing to check yourself, ask yourself if you do that. You'd be surprised, I think, to see how often you might judge other people for not doing what you think they should do. We can't do that anymore. If we want to liberate ourselves, we really have to make sure that we're not guilty of what we are accusing people of. And so becoming self-aware and detaching from things from the outside world, learning to make yourself happy, learning to seek your own validation, learning to integrate mind, body, and soul, the past with the present, and also learning to manifest a future. Again, this is where the law of attraction comes into play. You are stuck. If you're codependent, you're stuck in the past. Your relationships are mirrors to your experiences with your parents. And yet there's this entire beautiful world out there, this entire matrix that's alive with amazing energy that's just waiting for you to believe, resonate, and vibrate and believe in something different. If all of this makes sense to you, I implore you to check out the 12-week Breakthrough Coaching Program. At this time, I'm offering two versions. I have an on-demand version, which I'm offering at half off the regular price. You can purchase today. It does not come with Facebook moderation, however. But the class is completely the same. All the resources, the meditations, the homework assignments, the workbooks, the PDFs, all of that is the same. Upon graduation, when you finish the program, that's when you can actually join my larger 12-week Breakthrough Graduates Facebook page and interact with other members who have also participated in the class. Go to my website. We'll be happy to answer any questions you might have. Namaste, everybody. You're worthy. You are enough. And the light is within you. And your job is to find that light, brush it off, and let it shine. That's all you have to do. Bye for now. Until next time. If you love this content, check out the next video. And don't forget to click the link below so you can take the codependency quiz. We are all targets for narcissists. It's just those of us who have certain qualities will be fall more prey to them than those who have other qualities. And so when we're thinking about the types of qualities that a narcissist doesn't like in a person, there are actually a lot of them. But today we're going to be focusing on one. So